And here we are in chapter 1. And I'm not going to belabor this. It gives the background of Victor, the circumstances of his life. And we also then begin to hear about the orphan children. His mother, Carolyn Beaufort, is, her mother dies early, then her father dies, and then Victor's father marries her. Elizabeth, again, is an orphan. And so you have these motherless children, almost archetypes that are from the beginning of the book. And she brings, the mother brings Elizabeth home. And this shows the status of women, because just at the end of chapter 1, the mother says to him, "I have a pretty present for my Victor. Tomorrow he shall have it." So Elizabeth is a present. She's almost not a person. And this begins then her life of that intertwinedness, I don't think that's a word, her interconnectedness with Victor that lasts throughout the book. She is so bound to him that her fate is bound to him. And then Victor begins in chapter 2 to talk about his thirst for knowledge. And this will come back time after time after time after when he begins to create the creature. And notice I'm trying not to call it a monster. When he creates the creature and also afterwards. But he says at the beginning of chapter 2, "I was capable of a more intense application and was more deeply smitten with the thirst for knowledge." And he goes on to say, "The world was to me a secret which I desired to define." He wants to know the secrets of the world and of the universe. And at this point, we don't know what he is willing to give her those secrets, but we later find out that he gives very, very dearly. But it goes back to his hubristic attitude. He is brought up then in a very loving family. He has 2 more brothers who, the younger one in particular, William, will play an important part in the rest of the book. But with, is it Jack? Now I've already lost his name. Not so important. Also, we hear about his friend Clerval. And Clerval also will play an important part in the rest of the book. And I want to say more, and I just have to stifle myself because I need to wait until it is apropos to talk about that. Now, at the end of this chapter, Victor begins to talk of Paracelsus and Albertus Magnus. Now, these men were actual people, and they were alchemists, and they sought to find, this, like Victor seeks, the secrets of the universe, particularly the elixir of life or immortality, and the Philosopher's Stone. And of course, that was made famous by Harry Potter. Now, some would say they were crackpots. And certainly Victor's father does not give any credence to them because they worked with magic as well as science and reason. But Victor really gets involved with these men and then later comes back to them. He kind of puts them aside after his father says, leave them alone. But he later comes back to this. Now, Paracelsus in particular is quite an interesting character. He, as I said, he was a real man, and he believed in the recuperative powers of horse manure. And he said that he created a homunculus, a little person, by gestating, I don't know if it was sperm or what he was gestating, in horse manure. And he would traveled around Europe with this little person, which I really don't think was gestated in horse manure. Paracelsus also said that he wanted to be quartered when he died and buried in horse manure, covered with horse manure, because it would bring him back to life. His disciples did that, didn't bring him back to life, but I'm quite sure they did it incorrectly. But he seeks after them, and in one part along, he also says, and I'm sorry that our page numbers are not going to align here. He talks about Sir Isaac Newton as well, who was a scientist, and said he had partially unveiled the face of nature. And this again is what Victor seeks to do. Now, one of the themes in this book is destiny, fate, predestination. And we get this very strongly at the end of chapter 2 when he says, it was an effort of the Spirit of God, but it was ineffectual. Destiny was too potent, and her immutable laws had decreed my utter and terrible destruction. Now I want you to think about that, because I want you to think about whether or not Victor or anybody is responsible for our actions, or are we fated to act as we act?